Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we continue speaking about adjectives, in particular about how adjectives are compared in English. If you aren't subscribed to my channel yet, please do that, and let's start. Most adjectives in English have degrees of comparison: the comparative degree and the superlative degree. Let's look at some examples. We say small, smaller, the smallest; fluffy, fluffier, the fluffiest; good, better, the best; far, farther or further, and the farthest or the furthest; intriguing, more intriguing, the most intriguing. We see that these forms, the comparative form and the superlative form, may be formed differently. Sometimes we add particular endings. At other times, we completely change the word, like with the adjective good, for example. Good, better, the best. But not all adjectives can be compared. For example, let's take the adjective yellow. Can we say that something is yellower or more yellow than something else? Well, technically we can. But in practice, what would be the situation in which that should happen? Let's look at these three squares. Obviously, the third one is the yellowest, so technically we can say that the third square is the yellowest. But let's take a different adjective, wooden, for example. Can we say that something is more wooden than something else? Obviously, no. We cannot think of any situation in which that would be possible. So these forms, woodener and the woodenest, they do not exist in the language. Thus, we see that the comparative degree of adjectives expresses a higher degree of quality. We use the comparative degree when we compare two things or two people. For example, the Eiffel Tower is taller than the Statue of Liberty. This puppy is smaller than the rest of the litter. The Amazon River is longer than the Nile. Gold is more expensive than silver. And this task is more complicated than the one we did in class. In all of these examples, we use a then to compare one thing to another, and our adjectives are in the comparative form. Please pay attention that then should be written via A and not via E. Then via E means later. This is a different word. And again, looking at these examples, you see that some comparative forms are formed with the help of the ending ER. Others are formed with the help of the word more. Let's see, when do we use the ending ER to form the comparative form, and when do we use more? Monosyllabic adjectives, that is, adjectives that have one syllable, normally form their comparative degrees by adding the ER suffix. We say nice, nicer; warm, warmer; sweet, sweeter. Polysyllabic adjectives, or those that have multiple syllables, form their comparative degrees with the help of the word more or less. For example, complicated, more complicated; articulate, more articulate; curious, more curious; intriguing, more intriguing. We used the word more to show that something has a higher degree of something. The adjectives themselves are not changed. Complicated, more complicated. No suffixes are added. We can use the word less to show that the quality of the object we are talking about is less vivid. Convoluted, less convoluted; emotional, less emotional. Again, the adjectives are not changed. This is what we do with long adjectives. With polysyllabic adjectives, we just add the word more or less in front of them and do not change the adjectives themselves. Of course, this is not all that we should remember when we're forming the comparative degrees of adjectives. Adjectives that consist of two syllables and end in Y, OW, ER, and LE form their comparative degrees with the help of the suffix er. Happy, happier. Friendly, friendlier. Stuffy, stuffier. Busy, busier. Hollow, hollower. Narrow, narrower. Clever, cleverer. And gentle, gentler. Adjectives that have two syllables are also considered to be polysyllabic, right? But in this case, these adjectives end in particular combinations of words, and they follow their own rules. Now let's take a look at the superlative degree. The superlative degree expresses the highest degree of quality. Here we won't be talking about two objects or two people. We'll be speaking about something or somebody who is the best or the worst among many. We use it to compare more than two things or people to say which of them has the greatest or the least degree of quality. For instance, Toyota Yaris is smaller than Volkswagen Golf, but Mercedes Smart is smaller than Toyota Yaris. Thus, we can say that Mercedes Smart is the smallest of the three. This black dress costs $50, that red one costs $75, and the one with the sleeves is $120. The last dress is the most expensive. Tokyo is the largest city in the world. It is the largest among all the cities that we have in the world. And Mario is my best friend. I don't have a friend who is better than he. How do we form the superlative degree of adjectives? Monosyllabic adjectives form their superlative degree with the help of the ending est. Nice, nicer, the nicest. For example, it's the nicest hotel in the town. Warm, warmer, the warmest. For example, it was the warmest day of the year. Sweet, sweeter, the sweetest. For example, the front man has the sweetest voice. Polysyllabic adjectives form their superlative degree with the help of the word most and least. Similarly to the comparative degree, where we used more and less, if you remember. Beautiful, more beautiful, the most or the least beautiful. He's the most handsome man I know. Tiresome, more tiresome, the most or the least tiresome. It's the most tiresome job. Vigilant, more vigilant, and the most or the least vigilant. The castle has the most vigilant watch. Of course, we do have irregular adjectives that have their irregular degrees of comparison. Let's see. Some adjectives have irregular forms of degrees of comparison. They should be learned by heart. Good, better, the best. Bad, worse, the worst. Little, less, the least. Far, farther or further, the farthest or the furthest. Old, older or elder, the oldest or the eldest. Many, much, more, and the most. And late, later, the latest or the last. The last four adjectives have variance in this or that degree. We'll speak about the differences between these forms in a separate video. That will be our next lesson. And for now, you have to learn these forms because these adjectives are irregular. You just have to memorize them. Another group of irregular adjectives is adjectives that have two syllables and follow two rules. They can be used with both er and more in the comparative degree and with est and most in the superlative degree. Friendly, we can say friendlier and more friendly in the comparative degree, and the friendliest and the most friendly in the superlative degree. Both options are correct, and it's totally up to you which one you prefer. Clever, cleverer, or more clever, and the cleverest or the most clever. Quiet, quieter, more quiet, and the quietest or the most quiet. Simple, simpler or more simple, the simplest or the most simple. Gentle, gentler, more gentle, and the gentlest or the most gentle. In my practice, I see that people tend to use the forms with more because they are easier to pronounce. It's easier to say more quiet than quieter, right? But both forms exist in the language and both forms are used, so it's up to you which one you would like to use in your speech. Speaking about the comparison of adjectives, we cannot omit some spelling rules, because adding suffixes might mean that there will be some changes in the word. The first rule that we should remember is this. If the adjective ends in a consonant preceded by a stressed short vowel, the consonant is doubled before the endings er and est. So, we have big, bigger, the biggest. The consonant G is doubled because it follows a stressed vowel. Sad, sadder, the saddest. The same. Hot, hotter, the hottest. Thin, thinner, the thinnest. And fat, fatter, the fattest. Another rule that we should memorize is that if the adjective ends in Y, preceded by a consonant, Y is changed into I before ER and EST. Let's take happy. When we add the ending ER, the letter Y will be changed into I and we'll get happier. The same will be true for the ending EST, we'll get the happiest. Friendly, friendlier, and the friendliest. And wealthy, wealthier, and the wealthiest. Please pay attention that this rule is only true when the letter Y is preceded by a consonant, not by a vowel. Another rule that we should memorize is if the adjective ends in E, the E is dropped before ER and EST. Nice, nicer, the nicest. We don't say nicelier, nicest, right? And fine, finer, the finest. Not finier and finest. So these are our 3 rules that we should remember when we change adjectives forming the comparative degree or the superlative degree. Now, before we proceed, let's take a quick test. Here is a list of 8 English proverbs that contain adjectives in comparative or superlative degrees. Let's open the brackets and put the adjectives into the correct forms. Absence makes the heart grow. The adjective fond should take the comparative degree, fonder. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. That means that the further we are from the person we love or the place we love, the stronger our feelings towards that person or place get. A chain is no stronger than its weakest link. The chain is no stronger than its weakest link. Another very popular proverb is better late than never. Oftentimes, it's better to do something late than not to do it at all. He who loves last loves best. There are different variants of this proverb. Other variants are he who loves last loves longest, or he who loves last loves loudest. But I like this one. He who loves last loves best. It is easier said than done. It is always easier said than done. Everything is easier said than done. The grass is always greener on the other side. The pen is mightier than the sword. And laughter is the shortest distance between 2 people. In the last example, we have the article the. because there is a noun, a distance, the shortest distance. And please note that we will always have the definite article in this case when our adjective is in the superlative form and it precedes a noun, because we are speaking about something or somebody who or what is unique in a way, right? The best, the most expensive, the fastest, and so on and so forth. Another thing that I would like to discuss in this lesson is the irregular ER structure. What am I talking about? Let's look at this sentence. The smaller your house is, the easier it is to clean it. This is a structure that contains two comparatives preceded by the definite article the, though I have just said that we use the with the superlative form, right? Here we have the plus the comparative degree, and the structures that we use in one sentence are parallel, they are equal. The smaller your house is, the easier it is to clean it. If your house is small, it is easy to clean. If your house is smaller, it is even easier to clean, and so on and so forth. The faster you drive, the greater distance it takes to stop. Let's change this sentence. The slower you drive, the safer it is. In general, the older you get, the more you realize how precious life is. The more you read, the more knowledgeable you become. The more sun the cocktail get, the happier they are. Again, let's paraphrase this sentence. The less sun the cocktail get, the weaker they are. The more I speak to Tim, the more I like him. So, to show that some action depends on another action, the more you do something, the better result you get. In such sentences, we use the comparative degree preceded by the article the in one part of the sentence, and in the other one, after the comma, we also use the plus the comparative degree. We have two variants of the structure. The first variant of the structure will be the plus comparative plus a structure, whatever you wish to express. Then we put a comma. Then we have the plus another comparative plus a similar structure. The second variant will be the plus more plus a structure, comma, the plus more plus a structure. Like in the last example, the more I speak to Tim, the more I like him. It can be the more I speak to Tim, the less I like him. Now let's take a look at some common set phrases with irregular adjectives. The first phrase will be a change for the better or a change for the worse. When will you use such a structure? For instance, if you want to see a change for the better, you have to take things into your own hands. Or his dreams of an Air Force career were cut short by a change for the worse in his vision. Another common structure is so much the better or so much the worse. If you'll do this job without our help, so much the better. It is better, it's actually better. So much the better. If he doesn't follow the diet, so much the worse for him. It is worse for him. To be the worse for. This set phrase can have two different meanings. For example, the situation is even worse for the future generations. Here, it literally means that it is bad and even worse for the generations to come. Things will only be worse for them. So the meaning is pretty literal. But in this example, she's worse for adrenaline. We don't mean that she is not good enough for adrenaline, do we? Of course, we don't. What do we want to say? That she is addicted to adrenaline. She loves adrenaline. She wants more and more adrenaline in her life. Somebody may be worse for a drink. That means that this person drinks a lot, drinks too much. Another sad expression is none the worse for. A good tale is none the worse for being told twice. It is a proverb. That means that a good tale is worth being told twice. We'll be none the worse for letting them help us with the design. We'll only win if they help us with the design. We'll only benefit from their help. Another expression is if the worst comes to the worst. If the worst comes to the worst, you can always return to your native town. We must be able to rely on fully functional emergency power generators if the worst comes to the worst. If the worst comes to the worst means that if things get really, really bad. The next sad expression is to go from bad to worse. If you choose to disregard the doctor's advice, then things will go from bad to worse. Nothing good will come of it, right? Within the country, things went from bad to worse. Things got only worse. Nothing good was happening. As best. Jane did her job as best she could. You can add another as after the word best, so we can also say Jane did her job as best as she could. That's not obligatory. I will try to explain the processes as best I understand them, or as best as I understand them. At the best. James doesn't speak German. At best, he can greet people and introduce himself in the language, but this is it. At the best, so this is his maximum, right? This is the best thing that he can do in German. The least of or not the least of. The weather is the least of my concerns today. This is the thing that doesn't bother me at all. Richard has a lot of good qualities, not the least of which is intelligence. Intelligence is one of his great qualities. And the last expression, least of all. Nothing should be left to chance, least of all your electrical appliances. She trusts nobody, least of all herself. What does this mean? It means that your electrical appliances are the last things that you should leave unattended. She doesn't trust herself at all. She may even trust other people more than she trusts herself. Okay guys, this is all for today. If you have any questions to me, please leave them in the comment section down below. In our next lesson, we'll continue speaking about adjectives, and we'll talk about those adjectives that have different forms, like far, farther, the furthest, or old, older, or elder. We'll discuss in which situations we can use each of these forms and what are some peculiarities of some of them. So if you don't want to miss that lesson, please subscribe to this channel, press that bell button, and see you in the next video.